My name is Shelly Terrell, and today's presentation was my keynote for the Teachmeet in Newcastle, considering the curriculum. This was the first group of kids I began teaching in 1992 in Texas. Since then, I have taught in 3 different countries and trained teachers in over 150 countries online and offline. I want to share with you my story today because I think it's a great reflection of any curriculum worldwide, and also because I want to encourage you to share your stories. I believe in the power of storytelling. I believe when we want to transform education, we have to share our stories and show how we became the innovative, passionate, and motivated teachers we are today. If you're watching this presentation, more than likely you are part of this group. And the reason you're a part of this group is because you're online and you're so passionate about your learning and continuous professional development. But unfortunately, we are the exception. We aren't the norm. Most teachers are not doing what we do today. And the reason is because they need encouragement and they need to be able to see that they need to try and make the time and be motivated to make the time to do this. So, how do we get these teachers, the majority that are not doing this, to be able to take part in this community, in this continuous professional development? We have to share our stories. This is me as a little girl, and I'm a first-generation college graduate. I'm part of a generational cycle that was broken. And this is my father, the one who interrupted a generational cycle and perpetuated a new one. My father was the first person who taught me about education transformation and what education could be and the miracles that could happen. Both sets of my grandparents immigrated to Texas from Mexico. My father's parents had a second-grade education, and my father grew up in the worst neighborhood in San Antonio. When my father attended school, he wasn't allowed to speak Spanish or else he'd be hit with a ruler and sent home. The U.S. curriculum at the time included an English-only policy. Some of these policies still exist today in the U.S. My father never graduated from college, but he did graduate from high school. And at the time, for Sanchez to graduate from high school was significant. Most drop out. When he had 5 daughters, he swore each one of them would go to college. And they did. Me and my 4 sisters have even gotten and received our masters. And by doing this, he perpetuated a new cycle where my nieces and my nephew are now preparing to go to college. They excel in school. And yes, maybe college isn't for everyone, but when we go to college, we have a chance of getting out of poverty and crime and things that my family was used to for generations and generations. As an educator, I hope that you believe in the power of yourself because you have the power and the vision and the passion to break cycles. So when we look at our curriculum, and education as a whole in every country, we need to see how do we break these cycles? Because there are students around the world and they need you to break their generational cycles. Dr. Sugata Mitra, he worked with Newcastle and Gateshead in helping break cycles. He provided really poor children in India quality education through these computers that were like ATMs put in the poor neighborhoods, and students could just access them, children could access them, and they were in English, so they also improved and learned their English as well. In this equation, he just used technology, and there weren't any teachers. Children should just go, and he saw that the scores and learning improved by 30%. He said there are places on earth in every country where good schools cannot be built and good teachers cannot or do not want to go. In the UK, these places exist. And in the United States, these places exist. And worldwide, these places exist. And in reviewing our curriculum, we have to figure out a way that we can provide an education like the ones you are a part of. Teachers, the your kind of teachers, teachers that are passionate, and resources for those kids who need it the most, where children need you to break their generational cycles of poverty, crime, teen pregnancy, and so much more. I identify with Dr. Mitra's statement because I grew up in one of those places where good schools cannot be built and good teachers cannot or do not want to go. I lived in a city with the second highest teen pregnancy rate in the US. The chances of my father having 5 girls graduate from college was almost an impossibility. My grandfather built 2 houses, these are them, and we lived in the second one for free. We shared one bedroom. My grandmother would walk us to school every day, and my grandparents took care of us. Since I couldn't speak Spanish in my household, I was very fortunate my grandparents spoke Spanish to me, and I was so young that my brain, even in informal teaching, was able to soak up the Spanish, and I kept my Spanish as I grew older. Curriculums worldwide will deal with immigrants, and they are dealing with them now. I teach in Germany, and we have immigration problems. I come from the US, and we have immigration problems. And every single country will have immigration problems. And we need to be able to include in the curriculum how to best help immigrants and help them find ways to embrace their heritage, traditions, and culture. We need to find a way that our students can also embrace multilingualism and also be able to communicate with students worldwide. Have found that most students live in a microcosm and they rarely learn how to communicate with their peers worldwide or how to even embrace cultural differences. They carry stereotypes with them for decades and decades, and when they grow up and they begin communicating with peers worldwide, these stereotypes prevent them from being able to collaborate and communicate. So, how do we get the curriculum to begin to see that international collaboration and international culture communication are really important parts of the curriculum? And why? I recently attended an exhibit in the British Library Museum on English development, and one of the statistics that astounded me was that 400 million people speak English as a first language, but 1.4 billion people speak English as a second language. The world is global. Most businesses work with others worldwide, and we cannot solve world problems if our students cannot communicate, collaborate, and problem solve with peers worldwide. We have had some problems for decades, such as the environmental issues, peace, world peace, getting resources, getting broadband. Many of these issues are because we were not taught international communication. This wasn't part of our curriculum, and even if it was in such small doses when it should have been a major part. So now we talked about some questions about the curriculum, and I want us to think when developing the curriculum, one of the things that we should definitely ask ourselves and start from is what should learning look like? Well, we know about Dr. Mitra, and we know about how he had technology come into changing the lives of poor children in India. And technology is definitely a big part of this picture. But how has the technology that we have today, how has it transformed the way we learn and then transformed definitely the way we educate? Well, this is what Dr. Mitra said. He said, education is a self-organizing system where learning is an emergent phenomenon. What does this look like? It looks like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. And now I want to show you what my teaching looks like in various places that I have taught. These are refugee students that I taught with a group of other teachers in Greece for the South Athens program. And one of the things that we used was texting. Our students, a lot of them didn't have places to stay. They came with the same clothes every day. They were really poor. But one thing they did have were cell phones. And the reason is because cell phones are a bit of a staple. And in many places worldwide, they have them. So we can use these as ways to help educate um, students worldwide. These are my 4 to 6 year olds in Germany, and we do a lot of things on the computer. And one of the things we did was we had a global collaboration project, digital storytelling, with those students that were in Turkey, and they were also 6 years old. And for me, this was really significant because my students won't grow up with the same stereotypes that adults have had in the country, in Germany, when it comes to immigrants from Turkey. So I thought it was really important. I think it's not only about technology, but also it's about helping students embrace other cultures. And so in the bottom, you see various cultural events that I've had my students participate in throughout the years. In none of these pictures did you see a teacher. And the reason why is because not that the teacher is out of the equation. In the first experiment, yes, the teacher was out of the equation a bit in Dr. Mitra's experiments. But then he added this other program where he had grandmothers volunteer and support the children while they were learning on the computers, and he had them encourage them. And that, I think, is our role as educators. We are facilitators, we guide, we help our students on their paths, and we help them answer those questions and think. So we're a very important part of this equation. Dr. Mitra found that scores increased by over 20% when he added the grandmothers to encourage. So the teacher is very, very important. And what is our obligation? Well, I don't get angry with educators who don't use technology. I get angry with those who refuse to use technology. As educators preparing students for the world, we should be continually learning about ways technology is evolving to see the newest possibilities. It's always that question of what if? What if? I hear so many excuses for not using technology, such as, oh, it's not available to all, oh, well, the time, and different things like that. But I think we shouldn't think that way. We shouldn't think about all the barriers. Instead, we should think of all the possibilities. And here is Terry Friedman and I, and we're having a great time at the British Library learning about digital research technologies and the way that these technologies are helping students and people learn worldwide. We're testing 3D learning right now. So I think we should definitely always be looking and learning ourselves. Before I go, I want to share with you a story a friend of mine, David Ward, the creator of languagegarden.org, told me recently in Oxford. About two famous British politicians who were adversaries, Gladstone and Disraeli. And he met a woman who met both. And this is what she said about the experience. When I was with Gladstone, I felt I was with the most intelligent person in the world. But when I was with Disraeli, I felt I was the most intelligent person in the world. As educators, for many, many, many years inside the traditional classroom, we have been always taught by education programs and just by the teaching that we have observed that the teacher is the forefront and the most intelligent person in the world, inspiring students. And yes, there are moments for that. But I think the most difficult part is when we can become like Disraeli, and it's also the most important part. And we can make our students take learning into their own hands and feel like they are the most intelligent people in the world. Because soon we will pass off this world to them, and they have to be able to feel confident in decisions that they make with this world. And they can't do that if we're always just spoon feeding them. So I want to encourage you today to be more like Disraeli, empower your students, and to also share your story with other educators. Let them have glimpses of the great teaching you do on in your classroom. Let the parents see it. Let other students see it. Thank you so much for having me. In the fall of 2011, you can get my book, The 30 Goals Challenge for Educators, published by Eye on Education. And right now, we are participating in the 30 goals at teacherbootcamp.edublogs.org. You can also find me on Twitter at Terrell, and you can always email me at shellyterrell@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to me today.